The repair bay smelled like oil and burnt metal. Jake Morrison wiped his dirty hands on his work clothes and looked at the broken pipe in front of him. He had been working on Torvin Station for 2 years now, fixing things that broke and trying not to think too much about what happened in the darker parts of the station. Torvin Station was not a good place. It sat on the edge of space where nobody asked questions and money talked louder than laws. Jake had ended up here when his ship broke down and left him with no way to leave. He learned quickly to keep his head down, do his work, and ignore the bad things he saw. A voice called out to him. It was Vex, a traitor with too many arms and not enough honesty. Jake turned around slowly. Hey, human, Vex said. I have a job for you. Good money, 500 credits. Jake needed that money badly. It would pay for his docking fees for 2 whole months. But something in Vex's voice made him nervous. What kind of job? Jake asked. Simple. A cage lock is broken in the lower holds. It keeps shocking the merchandise when it should not. Quick fix for someone like you. Jake felt his stomach turn. The lower holds were where the station kept slaves. Everyone knew it happened, but nobody talked about it. The consortium said slavery was illegal, but out here in the dark edges of space, old habits stayed alive. I am busy with this pipe, Jake started to say. 500 credits, Vex repeated. Cash right now. Jake thought about his empty wallet and nodded. He grabbed his tool bag and followed Vex down through the station. Each level they went down got darker and felt heavier. Finally, they reached the lower holds. The smell hit Jake first. Fear and pain and hopelessness all mixed together. Cages lined the walls, filled with different kinds of aliens from across the galaxy. Most of them looked defeated, like they had given up on ever being free again. But one cage was different. Inside was a Valkyrian. Jake had only heard stories about them. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with fur that shimmered between deep orange and black. Her face looked like a big cat's face with sharp bones and eyes that glowed like melted gold. Even though she was crammed in a small cage with heavy chains on her wrists, she stood proud like a warrior. That one, Vex said, pointing. The lock shocks her every few hours. Not supposed to do that until the buyer wants it. Jake felt anger starting to build in his chest. He walked slowly toward the cage. The Valkyrian's eyes followed his every move. There was intelligence there and rage and something else he could not name. I am just here to fix the lock, Jake said quietly. He did not know why he felt the need to explain himself to a slave. The Valkyrian's lips pulled back, showing sharp teeth. Then fix it, human, and leave me to my fate. Her voice was low and rough, but Jake could hear the pain under the anger. He knelt down next to the cage's control panel and opened it up. The wiring inside was deliberately cruel. It was designed to cause as much pain as possible without killing. Jake's hands moved automatically, but his mind was racing. For 2 years, he had been ignoring this part of the station. He told himself it was not his problem, that he could not change the whole galaxy. That survival meant keeping quiet and staying safe. But looking at this magnificent being reduced to property, something inside him finally broke. His fingers stopped over a bunch of wires. He looked back at Vex, who was busy looking at his data screen. Then he looked at the Valkyrian again. Her golden eyes met his, and in that moment Jake made a choice. What is your name? He whispered. She blinked, surprised. Kira. Not that it matters to anyone here. It matters, Jake said. He turned back to the panel. His heart was beating hard. Kira, when this lock opens, you will have about 30 seconds before the station's alarms notice. The docking bay is 3 levels up, corridor 6. My ship is in dock 12. It is called the Dust Runner. Not pretty, but fast. Kira's eyes went wide. You are crazy. Probably, Jake agreed. He pulled out a small device from his bag. It was a scrambler he had built for emergencies. But I am really tired of fixing torture devices. Before he could change his mind, Jake attached the scrambler to the panel and turned it on. The cage door opened with a hiss. At the same time, every other cage in the hold released too. Alarms started screaming. Kira moved like lightning made flesh. The chains on her wrists broke when she flexed her arms. They had been weakened by all the shocks. She grabbed Vex before the traitor could even shout and snapped his neck with one quick move. Run, Jake yelled, though it seemed like he did not need to say it. Freed slaves were already running toward the exits, creating chaos everywhere. Kira grabbed Jake's shoulder with one clawed hand. You better not be lying about that ship, human. Name is Jake, he said, already running toward the stairs. And I never lie about ships. They ran together through the station's hallways. Alarms screamed around them. Security guards tried to stop them, but Kira moved through them like a storm. Jake had heard that Valkyrians were top predators on their homeworld, but seeing it in action was both terrifying and amazing. They burst into the docking bay. Jake pointed at his ship. The Dust Runner was beat up and old, with patches all over her hull and faded paint. But her engines were Jake's best work, and they roared to life when he activated them with his remote. "Get in," he shouted, opening the boarding ramp. Kira jumped up the ramp in 3 huge leaps. Jake followed and sealed the door behind them. He threw himself into the pilot's seat and grabbed the controls. The station's weapons were already targeting them, but Jake had spent 2 years studying their patterns. The Dust Runner shot out of the bay like a bullet. It twisted through the defense grid with only inches to spare. Energy blasts burned the space around them, but Jake's hands were steady. Within moments, they had cleared the station's range and jumped to faster than light travel. Only when the stars stretched into lines around them did Jake finally breathe out. He fell back in his seat and turned to look at his unexpected passenger. Kira stood in the doorway of the cockpit. Her orange fur was still standing up from fear and anger. She studied him with those strange golden eyes. Jake suddenly realized he had just thrown away his whole life on Torvin Station to rescue someone who could probably tear him apart without trying hard. "So," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I am Jake Morrison. Welcome to the Dust Runner. We are both wanted criminals now, but at least you are not in a cage anymore." For a long moment, Kira just stared at him. Then slowly, she knelt down so they were at the same height. One clawed hand reached out and gently touched his face. The gesture was so careful it seemed impossible from someone so deadly. "You freed me," she said. Her voice was full of wonder. "You gave up everything to free a stranger." Jake shrugged, uncomfortable with how intensely she was looking at him. "Could not leave you there. Would not be able to sleep at night." "Humans," Kira said, and something that might have been a smile crossed her cat-like face. "I heard stories about your kind. About your strange sense of honor. I thought they were myths." "Yeah, well, we are pretty mythical," Jake said weakly. Kira stood up. The smile faded. "You should know what you have done, Jake Morrison. The consortium will hunt you now. Vex was connected to powerful people, and I am not just any Valkyrian. I was a war guardian before I was captured. One of the best protectors of the Homeworld Council. My people think I died in battle. If they learn I survived, if they learn I was enslaved, it will cause big problems." "What kind of problems?" Jake asked. "It will start a war," Kira said flatly. "The Valkyrian people do not let their warriors be enslaved. When they learn what the consortium has been doing, they will burn Torvin Station to ashes and everyone connected to it." Jake took this in. "So what you are saying is, I did not just rescue you. I might have started a war between planets?" "Yes." "Huh." Jake rubbed his face. "Well, I was getting bored with just fixing ships anyway." Kira laughed. It sounded like thunder rolling. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met or the most foolish. Can I be both?" "Yes," she said, and this time the smile reached her eyes. "Jake Morrison, you freed me from chains I thought I would die in. By the laws of my people, I owe you a life debt. I am yours to command until that debt is paid." Jake held up his hands. "No, nobody owns anybody on this ship. You are free." That was the whole point. Kira tilted her head, studying him with new interest. "You truly do not understand what you have done, do you?" "I am starting to get that feeling." "Good." Kira moved to the co-pilot seat and sat down. Her big frame somehow fit even though the seat was made for smaller people. "Then we will learn together. But first we need a place to go. Where are we running to?" Jake pulled up the star maps. "I know some people in the Outer Rim. Colonies that do not ask questions. We can hide there while we figure out what to do next." "What to do next," Kira repeated. "You are including yourself in my future." "Well, like you said, I started this mess. Seems only fair I help fix it." Jake set the course and turned on the autopilot. "Besides, I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. And interesting beats boring any day." Kira leaned back in her seat. Her golden eyes reflected the starlight streaming past the window. "Interesting. Yes, that is one word for what is coming." She looked at Jake. "The consortium will send hunters. They will not stop until we are dead or back in cages." "Then I guess we better not let them catch us," Jake said with more. 3 weeks had passed since the escape from Torvin Station. Jake was learning that traveling with a Valkyrian war guardian was teaching him how little he knew about real fighting. Kira moved through the ship like a ghost. Her predator instincts were always alert. She trained in the cargo hold every morning, doing brutal combat exercises that made Jake tired just from watching. The Dust Runner had landed at a place called Helion's Rest. It was a rough colony built into an asteroid field. Everyone here was running from something, which made it perfect for hiding. Jake was in the local market, trying to trade some old parts for food and supplies when he felt someone watching him. He had developed good instincts over the years. Right now, those instincts were screaming danger. Jake casually adjusted his jacket and looked around. 3 people were following him through the crowd. They wore normal civilian clothes but moved like soldiers, bounty hunters. Jake changed direction, heading toward the more crowded parts of the market. His communicator buzzed. Kira's voice came through, low and urgent. "Jake, I count 5 enemies coming toward you. They are professionals." "I saw 3 of them," Jake said quietly. "Where are you?" "On a rooftop east side." "I can reach you in 30 seconds. "No," Jake said quickly. "If they see you, they will know what we are." "Can you get to the ship?" "Not without leaving you in danger." Jake ducked into an alley. His mind was racing. The hunters were getting closer. He could hear them moving together, the soft sound of weapons being ready. These were not the usual thugs. Someone had sent real professionals. A shadow dropped from above, landing in front of him without making much sound. The hunter was a Krell with multiple arms holding different weapons. "Jake Morrison, you are wanted for theft of valuable property. Come quietly and we will not hurt you too much." "Theft?" Jake backed up. "I freed a person, not property." "Does not matter to us," the Krell said, moving forward. "The consortium sees it differently." The other hunters were blocking the alley exits. Jake's hand moved to the small gun at his hip. He knew it was useless against 4 armed professionals. This was going to hurt badly. Then Kira arrived. She came from above, dropping from the rooftops like an angel of death. Her clawed foot hit the Krell in the head and the hunter went down hard. Before the others could react, she was moving. A blur of orange fur and deadly skill. The fight lasted maybe 10 seconds. When it was over, 4 hunters were on the ground, unconscious or worse. Kira stood in the center of the alley, barely breathing hard. The 5th hunter, smarter than his friends, had run away. "I said I could handle it," Jake said weakly. Kira turned to him. Her golden eyes were blazing. "You would be dead. Do not confuse my life debt with your ability to fight trained killers." "Fair point." Jake stepped over one of the fallen hunters. "But now they know you are with me. Word will spread." "Let it spread," Kira growled. "I am tired of hiding. If the consortium wants to send hunters, let them come. Each one they send will learn why Valkyrians are feared across the galaxy." Jake understood her anger, but he also understood tactics. "Kira, we cannot fight the entire consortium. We need allies, information, and a plan that does not involve you fighting every bounty hunter they send." Kira's ears flattened against her skull. Jake had learned this meant she was upset. But she nodded. "You are right. The warrior in me wants blood, but the Guardian remembers strategy. What do you suggest?" "There is someone I know," Jake said, already moving toward the docks. "An information broker named Carl Davies. If anyone knows who is really behind these hunters and how deep this goes, it is him. But he is on Omega Outpost. That is 2 weeks of travel through some rough space." "Then we should leave now," Kira said, "before more hunters arrive." They made it back to the Dust Runner without more trouble. But Jake noticed the looks they got. A human and a Valkyrian traveling together was unusual enough to be remembered. By tonight, every information network in the area would know where they had been. As the Dust Runner left orbit, Jake planned their route carefully. Omega Outpost sat where 3 major trade routes crossed. This made it very busy and very dangerous. The station was technically independent, run by a council of merchants and criminals who had carved out their own little kingdom beyond consortium control. "Tell me about this Carl Davies," Kira said from the co-pilot seat. She had started spending most of her time in the cockpit, keeping Jake company during the long jumps between systems. "Met him about 5 years ago," Jake said. "I was working on a deep space hauler and we stopped at Omega for repairs. Carl is a retired spy from Earth's Colonial Defense Force. His own people betrayed him, so he decided to sell secrets instead of protecting them. He is cynical, paranoid, and really smart. You trust him? With information?" "Yes, with my life. Maybe with yours?" Jake paused. "We will see. Carl respects skill and money in that order. You have the first and I can provide the second." Kira was quiet for a moment, watching the stars streak past. Jake, why did you really free me? The truth. Jake thought about the question. He had been asking himself the same thing for weeks. I told you. Could not leave you there. That is a reason, but not the whole truth. You gave up your life, your safety, everything you built on that station. For a stranger. For an alien you never met. Why? Jake sighed. You want the real answer? I was tired. Tired of being the guy who looks away, who fixes the torture cages and tells himself it is not his problem. I grew up hearing stories about Earth, about how humanity almost destroyed itself and then decided to be better, about how we joined the galaxy believing we could make a difference. He laughed bitterly. But out here in the real galaxy, those beliefs seemed stupid. So I stopped trying. I became the guy who just survives. And then you saw me, Kira said softly. And then I saw you, Jake agreed. Looking at you in that cage, I realized I had become exactly what I hated. Someone who sees wrong and does nothing. So I did something. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it will get us both killed. But at least I will not die knowing I was a coward. Kira reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. It had become a familiar gesture over the past weeks. In Valkyrian culture, we have a saying. Honor is not found when you have no fear. Honor is found when you choose to act despite fear. You are not a coward, Jake Morrison. You are something rarer. You are someone who remembers what they believe even when the galaxy forgets. Jake felt his throat get tight. Thanks, Kira. They traveled in comfortable silence after that. But Jake's mind was racing. Professional hunters meant someone with serious money wanted them dead. The narrow escape at Helion's Rest would not be their last. They needed answers fast. The journey to Omega Outpost took 12 days. They had to avoid 2 more hunter groups and fly through a nasty asteroid field. But finally, the huge station appeared on their screens. Omega Outpost was amazing to see. Built from the salvaged pieces of hundreds of ships, it spread across space like a metal spider web. Thousands of ships came and went every day, making it easy to disappear in the traffic. Jake guided the Dust Runner through the docking process, paying fees he could barely afford. As they walked through Omega's crowded hallways, he kept Kira close. The station was supposedly safe, but that did not mean much when bounties were involved. Carl Davies worked out of a bar called the Broken Compass. It was tucked away in one of Omega's older sections. The bar was dimly lit and smelled of cheap alcohol and broken dreams. Jake spotted Carl right away, sitting in his usual corner booth, surrounded by data screens and looking like he had not slept in days. Carl was in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked up as Jake approached. His eyebrows went up when he saw Kira. Jake Morrison, Carl said. I heard rumors you went crazy and freed a Valkyrian slave. I am delighted to see the rumors were true. Good to see you too, Carl, Jake said, sliding into the booth. Kira stayed standing. Her presence made other customers nervous. Carl studied Kira with professional interest. A war guardian, if I am not wrong. The marks on your arms give it away. You are a long way from Valkyria, and I am guessing it was not a vacation. I was captured during a deep space patrol, Kira said. Her voice was hard. Betrayed and sold to slavers who kept me drugged for months. Jake freed me from Torvin Station 3 weeks ago. Carl whistled low. Torvin Station? That is bad news, friend. You know who runs the slave operations there? I am guessing someone with consortium connections, Jake said. Worse. Senator Marcus Cole. He has been using his position to run illegal operations across the outer sectors. Slaves, weapons, experimental technology. All off the books, all very profitable, and all protected by people much more powerful than him. Jake felt his stomach drop. A senator. I broke a senator's operation. You did more than that, Carl said, pulling up data on one of his screens. You freed over 50 slaves that day. Most scattered, but 3 have already given testimony about Torvin Station's operations. The story is spreading through back channels. Give it another month and it will hit mainstream news. That is good though, right? Jake said. Exposure will shut down his operation. Carl gave him a pitying look. Jake, you sweet innocent child. Exposure will force Cole to eliminate the evidence. That means you, Kira, and anyone who can testify about what they saw. He has already hired the weeks after the council testimony were crazy with media attention, interviews, and investigations. Jake found himself pushed into a spotlight he never wanted. His face appeared on news feeds across the galaxy. One headline said, "The mechanic who changed everything." Another said human compassion breaks chains. Jake hated it. He was not a hero. He was just someone who did what needed doing. Kira seemed to handle the attention better, though Jake noticed the strain around her eyes. She had been formally brought back into the War Guardian ranks with full honors. The Valkyrian Homeworld Council had issued a formal thank you toward humanity, specifically naming Jake. "You realize you are probably the most famous human in the outer sectors right now," Patricia said one morning over breakfast in their new rooms. The Consortium Council had given them secure housing while the investigation continued. "Lucky me," Jake muttered into his coffee. Lyra entered the room. Her face was serious. "We have a problem. Carl just sent an encrypted message. Someone put out a new bounty on you and Kira. 1 million credits, dead or alive." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "What? Cole is in jail. Who would put out a bounty now?" "Someone who does not want the investigation to go deeper," Lyra said grimly. "The early audits have found connections to at least 20 more officials. Someone is scared of what else you might reveal." "But we already testified," Kira protested. "Everything we know is on record." "They do not know that," Patricia pointed out. "Or they are worried about what you might remember if you keep digging. Either way, you are both in danger again." Jake stood up. Frustration boiled over. "This is crazy. We did everything right. We exposed the corruption. Cole is in jail and now we are targets again. When does it end?" "When all of Cole's partners are in custody," Lyra said. "Or when you are dead. Those are the options." Kira's claws came out, scoring the table. "Then we go on the attack. We helped Patricia gather evidence before. Let us help find these people and bring them down." "Absolutely not," Lyra said firmly. "You are witnesses, not investigators. Your job is to stay alive long enough for the trials." "How very boring," Kira growled. The argument was interrupted by alarms screaming through the building. Patricia's communicator lit up with urgent messages. "Security breach. Multiple enemies incoming. They are using military equipment to jam our defenses." "How many?" Lyra demanded, already moving toward the weapons locker. "At least 15. They are professionals. Well armed. And they are heading straight for this floor." Jake felt his heart race. So much for secure housing. "We need to move," Lyra said, tossing weapons to Patricia and Kira. She hesitated, then handed Jake a plasma pistol. "Can you use this?" "Point and shoot, right?" Jake said, checking the charge. "More or less. Try not to hit us." They moved out of the apartment and into the hallway. Sounds of combat echoed from below as security forces fought the attackers, but Jake could hear the firefight moving closer. "Service elevator," Patricia said, pointing. "We can reach the docking bay and get to our ship." They ran. Kira took the lead with her predator grace. They had almost reached the elevator when the first attacker appeared. He was a Krolon, heavily armored and carrying a weapon that looked like it could punch through walls. Kira did not hesitate. She jumped, covering 10 feet in a single leap. Her claws found weak points in the armor. The Krolon went down hard. More attackers poured into the hallway. Lyra and Patricia gave covering fire while Jake and Kira got into the elevator. The doors started to close, but not before Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the attackers was human, and he wore the badge of the Consortium Security Forces. "They have people inside the security forces," Jake said as the elevator went down. "This is not just criminals. It is organized by people with access to official resources, which means nowhere in Consortium space is safe," Lyra said grimly. "We need to get you off this station and somewhere they cannot reach." The elevator opened onto the docking bay level. Chaos everywhere. More attackers had broken into the bay and security forces were desperately trying to hold them back. Jake spotted their diplomatic shuttle across the bay, but reaching it meant crossing 100 meters of open space under fire. "I have a bad feeling about this," Jake muttered. "Stay close to me," Kira said, and suddenly she was moving. She used her speed and skill to cross the bay in quick runs. Jake followed, trying not to think about the energy bolts burning the air around them. They had almost reached the shuttle when a huge explosion rocked the bay. Jake was thrown off his feet. His ears were ringing. Through the smoke, he saw a figure coming toward them. Tall, armored, carrying weapons that screamed military special operations. The figure raised a rifle, aiming directly at Jake's chest. Time seemed to slow. Jake tried to move to raise his own weapon, but he knew he was too slow. Then Kira was there, slamming into him and knocking him aside. The energy bolt meant for Jake hit her instead. catching her in the shoulder. She went down with a roar of pain. "Kira!" Jake scrambled to her side. The wound was bad. Her armor was burned through and blood stained her fur. The armored figure moved forward, raising his weapon for another shot. But Lyra appeared from the smoke like an avenging angel. She and the attacker fought in a brutal display of close combat. Two trained killers operating at a level Jake could barely follow. Patricia reached them, already pulling medical supplies from her pack. "We need to get her onto the ship now." Jake lifted Kira up, supporting her weight. She was conscious but weakening fast. Together they stumbled up the shuttle's boarding ramp. Behind them, Lyra finished her opponent with a vicious strike and ran after them. The shuttle lifted off even as more attackers entered the bay. Energy fire cut across their hull, but the pilot, one of Lyra's trusted team, flew with desperate skill. They cleared the station and jumped to faster than light speed within seconds. Only then did Jake allow himself to breathe. He knelt beside Kira, who was lying on a medical bench while Patricia worked on her wound. "You saved my life," Jake said. His voice was shaking. "You threw yourself in front of that shot." "Of course I did," Kira said through gritted teeth. "You are pack. We protect our pack." "Pack?" Jake repeated. Lyra knelt beside them. Her face was soft. "In Valkyrian culture, pack is stronger than family. It is a bond chosen rather than born into. Kira is telling you that you have become part of her pack." Jake felt something in his chest tighten. He took Kira's hand carefully, mindful of her claws. "Then I guess that makes you part of my pack too. And pack does not let pack get shot." "Next time you can take the bullet," Kira said, but she was smiling. "Where are we going?" Jake asked Lyra. "Valkyria," Lyra said. "The homeworld. It is the one place the consortium cannot reach you, and it is time the council understood the full scope of what is happening." "Will they welcome a human?" Jake asked uncertainly. Lyra glanced at Patricia, who smiled. "If they can welcome me, they can welcome you. Besides, you are the one who freed a war guardian. That earns you respect." The journey to Valkyria took 2 weeks. During that time, Kira healed with the remarkable toughness of her species. Jake spent his days learning about Valkyrian culture from Patricia and planning their next moves with Lyra. "The investigation has found something disturbing," Lyra told him one evening. "Cole's slavery operation was actually a cover for something bigger. They were not just selling slaves. They were studying them, running experiments on different species to understand their abilities and weaknesses." "To what end?" Jake asked. "We do not know yet, but the evidence suggests someone was building a database of vulnerabilities, the kind of information you would need if you were planning a war." Jake felt cold. "You think someone is planning an attack?" "I think someone has been planning something for years and we stumbled into the middle of it. The slavery was just one piece. Cole was just one worker. We are dealing with something much larger, and they want us dead because we exposed part of their operation." "Exactly. Which is why getting you to Valkyria is crucial. The homeworld has resources and security that even the consortium cannot match. We can protect you there while we figure out who is really behind all this." When Valkyria finally appeared on their screens, Jake pressed his face to the window in wonder. The planet was beautiful, with vast forests and gleaming cities that blended perfectly with the natural landscape. Valkyrian ships patrolled the system in perfect formations, a display of military might and discipline. They landed at the capital city's diplomatic port. As the shuttle's ramp lowered, Jake saw a group waiting for them. Valkyrians in ceremonial armor, their fur groomed perfectly, their bearing proud. At the front stood an older Valkyrian male with graying fur and eyes that had seen too much. He wore armor marked with symbols of high rank. "That is High Commander Drake North," Lyra whispered. "Head of the War Guardian Council. Very traditional, very powerful." Drake approached as they came out of the ship. His eyes swept over the group, staying on Kira and then fixing on Jake with unsettling intensity. "War Guardian Kira," he said. His voice was like gravel. "You have returned to us from beyond death itself. This is a day of celebration." He paused. "And this is the human who freed you." "Yes, High Commander," Kira said formally. "May I present Jake Morrison of Earth? He risked his life to free me from slavery and has helped expose." Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Patricia got a small transport ship registered to a civilian supply company. Jake modified cargo containers to include life support and stealth shielding. Kira and Lyra practiced close-quarters combat in the ship's tight hallways. On the morning of their departure, Jake stood in the armory, checking his equipment one final time. Kira entered, moving with her usual silent grace. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," Jake admitted. "We are about to sneak onto a military battlecruiser, confront a corrupt admiral, and try to stop a galaxy-wide coup. I am pretty sure that is outside my skill set." Kira placed her hand on his shoulder. "You freed me from slavery, exposed corruption that reached the highest levels of power, and survived multiple assassination attempts. I think your skill set is more impressive than you believe. Or I have just been incredibly lucky." "Perhaps," Kira agreed, "but I have learned something about humans in the time we have spent together. You have a gift for doing impossible things when the situation demands it. It is what makes your species so dangerous and so valuable. That is either inspiring or terrifying." "It is both," Kira said and pulled him into a hug. It was careful, mindful of her strength and claws, but warm. "Thank you, Jake Morrison, for everything you have done, for seeing a person in that cage instead of property, for risking everything to do what was right." Jake returned the hug. "You are my pack, remember? Pack protects pack." When they pulled apart, Kira's golden eyes were bright. "When this is over, when we have stopped Stone and the Ascendancy, what will you do?" "I do not know," Jake admitted. "Go back to fixing ships, I guess. Though probably somewhere quieter than Torvin Station. Or," Kira said carefully, "you could come to Valkyria. The Council has offered you honorary citizenship. You would be welcome here." Jake studied her face, seeing the hope there. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I am asking you to consider it. You have become important to me, Jake. More than just pack. I care for you. Deeply. In ways that are complicated given our different species and cultures." Jake felt his heart racing.
"Kira, I care about you too."
"You are brave and fierce and somehow kind despite everything you have been through, but I am just a mechanic. You are a war guardian. We are from completely different worlds." "Yes," Kira agreed, "but perhaps that is why it works. You see me as a person, not just a warrior, and I see you as someone remarkable, not just a human." She leaned down until their faces were close. "When this mission is complete, I would like to explore what we could be together, if you are willing." "I am willing," Jake said softly. "More than willing." They might have said more, but Lyra's voice came over the intercom. "Everyone to the bridge. We are approaching the meeting point." The next hours passed in tense preparation. They docked with a legitimate supply convoy headed for the Sovereign Dawn. Jake and the team sealed themselves into modified cargo containers with enough air for 6 hours. If everything went according to plan, they would be aboard the battlecruiser within 2 hours. If things went wrong, they would suffocate in boxes before anyone knew they were there. Jake felt the cargo container being moved. He heard the muffled sounds of loading procedures. His suit's display showed their progress as they were shuttled from the supply ship to the Sovereign Dawn. Finally, after what felt like forever, they were aboard. Jake waited exactly 30 minutes, allowing the supply crews to finish their deliveries and leave. Then he carefully opened the container. They were in a cargo bay exactly as planned. Jake helped the others out of their containers, and they quickly hid the boxes behind other cargo. Lyra checked her datapad, pulling up the ship's layout. "Stone's command center should be on Deck 7, forward section. We need to move quickly before someone notices we do not belong." They moved through the ship like ghosts, using service corridors and maintenance shafts that Jake identified from his knowledge of similar vessels. Twice they had to hide from passing crew members, but their civilian clothes and confident bearing kept them from drawing attention. Finally, they reached Deck 7. And that is when they hit their first serious problem. The hallway leading to Stone's command center was guarded by 4 armed soldiers in full combat armor. Not regular Navy security, but something more elite. "Ascendancy forces," Lyra whispered. "Stone's personal guard. Can we go around?" Jake whispered. "Not without losing time we do not have," Patricia said, checking her watch. "The supply ship leaves in 40 minutes. If we are not back by then, we are trapped here." Kira's claws extended slightly. "Then we go through them. 4 armed guards in power armor against the 4 of us," Jake said. "I am not loving those odds." "You lack imagination," Kira said, and there was a predatory gleam in her eyes. "Lyra, do you still carry smoke grenades?" Lyra smiled. "Always." "Then here is what we do." 2 minutes later, Jake was walking down the corridor alone, his hands raised in surrender. The guards immediately raised their weapons, targeting him. "Stop right there," one commanded. "Identify yourself." "Jake Morrison," Jake said, trying to sound terrified. It was not hard. I am a civilian contractor. I got lost trying to find the mess hall. Please do not shoot. How did you get on this deck? This area is restricted. I took a wrong turn in the maintenance shaft. I am sorry. I am just trying to get back to the cargo bay. The guards looked at each other. One spoke into his communicator. Command, we have a civilian on deck 7. Running identification now. That is when Lyra's smoke grenades went off, filling the corridor with thick gray clouds. The guards' thermal sensors were useless in the chaos, their vision completely blocked. Kira and Lyra struck from above, dropping from ventilation shafts they had accessed while Jake distracted the guards. The fight was brief and brutal. Kira's claws found weak points in the armor, while Lyra's precise strikes disabled weapons and communication gear. Within seconds, all 4 guards were unconscious. Patricia came out of hiding and helped Jake drag the bodies into a storage closet. That was terrifying, Jake said, his heart pounding. That was effective, Kira corrected, already moving toward the command center entrance. The door was locked, requiring biometric access. But Jake had expected that. He pulled out a device he had built from spare parts and attached it to the door's control panel. This will take about 2 minutes to bypass the security, he said, his fingers flying over the device's interface. Assuming the encryption has not been updated since the last time I worked on these systems. And if it has been updated? Patricia asked. Then we are about to set off every alarm on the ship and die in a very exciting firefight. Your optimism is inspiring, Lyra said dryly. The device beeped. The door slid open. No alarm sounded. Never doubted it for a second, Jake said, trying not to sound as relieved as he felt. They entered the command center, weapons ready. The room was smaller than Jake expected, filled with advanced communication equipment and data terminals. And standing at the central console, reviewing holographic displays, was Admiral Gregory Stone. He turned as they entered, and to Jake's surprise, he did not look shocked. He looked resigned. I wondered how long it would take, Stone said calmly. Jake Morrison, the mechanic who could not mind his own business. And War Guardians Kira and Lyra. I am honored. You knew we were coming? Patricia asked. I knew someone would eventually piece it together. I underestimated how quickly. Stone gestured to the displays around him. But it does not matter. You are too late. The operation launches in less than an hour. By this time tomorrow, the consortium as you know it will cease to exist. We can stop you, Kira said, moving forward. Stone smiled. Can you? Look around, War Guardian. You're on my ship, surrounded by my people. Even if you kill me, the plan proceeds. I am just one piece of a much larger machine. Then tell us who else is involved, Lyra demanded. Give us the names of the other Ascendancy leaders. Why would I do that? Because we can offer you a deal, Patricia said. Cooperation in exchange for mercy. You are facing execution for treason. But if you help us stop the coup, the consortium might show leniency, Stone laughed. Mercy from a corrupt system that enslaves entire species in the name of commerce? That allows the strong to exploit the weak while pretending to value equality? No, thank you. The Ascendancy will bring order. True order, where power is acknowledged and wielded by those capable of using it properly. You are insane, Jake said. You are talking about dictatorship. I am talking about efficiency, Stone corrected. Democracy is slow, messy, and weak. It allows people like you to interfere with operations beyond your understanding. The Ascendancy recognizes that some beings are naturally superior. We will guide the galaxy to its full potential. By enslaving and experimenting on people, Kira snarled. I was in one of your cages, Admiral. I know what your version of guidance looks like. For the first time, Stone's composure cracked slightly. The research was necessary. We needed to understand our enemies to overcome them. Sacrifices had to be made. Sacrifices, Jake repeated. You mean people? Sentient beings with lives and families and hopes. You tortured them like they were lab animals. They were resources, Stone said coldly. Nothing more. Jake felt rage boiling through him, but before he could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Stone's smile returned. My guards have been discovered. I am afraid your time is up. He